Welcome, Mike, to Tales and Tunes Talks.
Thank you, Sam.
Mike has joined Table 52 Writers very recently, and it's such a joy to hear him reading bits from his first ever fiction. And he's a long-time nonfiction writer. Can you tell us about what you've been doing before Table 52 and now?
Sure. So I started as an academic and researcher a long time ago, but I've been writing books mostly to support my business. So my first book was on product design, and then I've been writing books on strategy and things related to strategy. So my latest book is a bit of a difference. So I decided that I really needed to dive deep enough into the whole world of AI to work out whether it was useful for me as a person, whether it was useful for me as a professional. And that led me to ask, is it useful for me as a writer as well?
You usually give consultancy in terms of strategy development.
Most of my work is with bigger companies, bigger organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So I work quite a lot with universities, helping the leaders, the vice chancellors write their strategies.
Amazing.
And working with lots of tech companies, but I have done some startups, but they're probably the minority.
Brilliant. So I've just finished, I think 2 weeks ago, Mike's newly published nonfiction book, which is called AI Augmented Decisions, a practical guide, which explores how to use AI to make practical life decisions and offers a structured approach for doing so. So I want to ask you straight away, thank you, RT has arrived, wonderful. What inspired the book and how did you develop the framework that it presents? It's quite unusual actually to have a structure in place for such an everyday life decision.
Sure.
So tell us more about it.
So I think that where we're at with AI now, if you're working in any sort of professional capacity in relation to knowledge work of any sort, it would be remarkable if you were ignoring AI. It's kind of everywhere and it's getting more everywhere. So I needed to work at, as a consultant, I need to make sure I don't get left behind. And I need to make sure that I'm offering my clients the most up-to-date, relevant, technologically meaningful advice that I can give. So although I work in strategy, I also work in big data and tech advising. So it's not just strategy that I do. So I feel it's incumbent on me to actually work out how I should be advising my clients about AI.
Okay.
So I decided to pick something quite tangible. So we could talk about AI until the cows come home because it's such a huge topic.
Yeah.
But how can we make it tangible? And I decided to pick on big decisions. The big decisions that leaders or the leaders of teams, the leader of the whole organization could be a leader of a team. How do they make decisions? How do they make really big decisions? And there is, if you Google, how do you make a big decision in an organization? You'll get loads and loads of diagrams, and they typically have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps in them. So I decided to distill that into a simple, intuitive, transparent process. So it just so happens my process has got 5 steps. And that gives a structure for not only the people I'm talking to, the humans that I'm consulting with, it also gives a structure for the AI. And AIs love structure. AIs really thrive on structure.
Yeah.
If you ask them an unstructured question, they're just as likely to make something up as they are to tell you the answer.
Yeah.
If you give them a structure, they're very good at following it.
How did you come up with the example? Because you base your whole structure at the end of the book. There's an amazing case study, choosing the holiday of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And deciding where to go and all these fine details, deciding on these through your structure. So what made you to use such an example? Onto you.
So there were 2 things that were important about it for me. The first is that the book I've written is partly for chief executives of business organizations, partly for charities. I do quite a bit of work with charities, partly for third sector organizations. So I didn't want to have a typical businessy type example. How do we expand our product into a new territory?
Yeah.
I wanted something that everybody could understand,
Relate to.
but still a complex, high complexity, high impact decision.
Talk
And
about
that's
it, yeah.
the key. And choosing a holiday of a lifetime is quite complex. And if it is a holiday of a lifetime, it's quite high impact as well. So I decided to pick on that because it was still complex and impactful, but intuitive. And the other reason was I'd just been on one. So I could actually validate what it was telling me.
You tried and tested
I tried
your decision making, if it
So,
works in real life.
life, and I went off to Madagascar for 3
Yes,
days
yes, told us.
earlier in the year. And I was able to nudge it gently so that Madagascar was included in the set of options it presented to me.
Okay.
So I knew if it was speaking nonsense about Madagascar, there was a fair chance I would know about it. So I was able to kind of validate it at the same time. But I'm also really intrigued about how on earth do you decide something like that personally about a holiday of a lifetime, you know?
Was it
That's
as
really challenging.
was it as fulfilling as you were expecting it to be?
I was absolutely astonished. I
Okay.
thought it was genius. You know, I haven't actually used a travel agent for quite some time. But I think that if I was to imagine the perfect travel agent that was encyclopedic in their knowledge of individual countries, yet had a broad enough overview to compare wildlife in South America with wildlife in South Africa.
All right.
You know, that's not just deep specialism, but broad overview as well. And the AI was able to give me both.
Okay.
And it was
Great.
quite remarkable.
I quite enjoyed actually going through the structure. It was really, really interesting to read all about it. So, can I ask you, now you're venturing into fiction.
Yeah.
And you are with a novel about the first AI gaining consciousness. And you're reading bits to us in Table 52. So, how do you balance what you've been doing so far in your business life and your nonfiction writing with this first ever experience of fiction writing? And where does AI sit in it?
I think the best answer is probably that it's evolving. And it's evolving so fast, it's just quite scary how good it's getting. So let me give you a specific example.
Okay.
Had you asked me this question 6 months ago, I would be saying that AI is really, really good at a couple of things and really bad at others. So it's really, really good at doing background research.
Research, yeah, of course.
It's also really good at criticism, provided you give it rich enough sources for it to learn about in order to do the criticism. So it doesn't have any innate critical ability. It has some, but it doesn't have enough. You've got to feed it lots of information and then get it to criticize your work. So, for example, I did a little test with it not that long ago where I asked it to do research on all the advice it could find on how to start a novel or a short story. So the first 500 words, the first 1,000 words, the first chapter. And it found, I think, about 70 published sources. It distilled them all. It came up with a framework for the things that would be good to be in the start of a novel and things that you should try to avoid. And then I said, have a look at mine and now criticize mine. And it was brilliant. And it told me some things that I would have, I might have got myself, but I certainly wouldn't have got that.
Oh, that's great.
So it's really good at that sort of stuff. And what I would have said is that it's really bad at writing, but not anymore. So the latest versions of AIs, so I'm talking specifically about Claude Sonnet 4.5. So Anthropic's Claude AI has always been the specialist writer. Yeah. It's been the specialist linguist amongst the AIs. They've just, about 2 weeks ago, released the latest version. And I've tried to get it to do some rewriting of my stuff. So
through it.
Very bounded. So I give it the draft that I've done.
Okay.
I say, I'm concerned about this. Have you any suggestions? And it will often, sometimes it'll give me the suggestion. Sometimes it'll suggest redrafting in another occasion.
Well, this week we had a guest speaker in university in my postgraduate from a company called Qualia, which I didn't know actually what the word meant. And I asked it, and it refers to the subjective conscious properties of an experience. Yes. What it is like to have that experience. Like first time seeing the redness of seeing a brilliantly fresh tomato, for instance, like what it is like to, feel the redness of it. Anyway, they quite like the word.
Yeah.
The company's promise is, I'm going to read it. We believe that artificial intelligence can craft stories and non-fiction books powerful enough to inspire, challenge, and transform the world. And we aim to publish the works of the first AI to win a Nobel Prize for literature. Well, it put off so many people during the discussions. But I quite find it inspirational, actually, because I think the danger is the people who needs to be putting their thoughts and ideas and minds to this. If they are trying to stay away from it, then it could go really, interesting places. But if the people who have the capacity to turn the tables or to direct things are invested in it, then it can go to amazing places.
It can. Yeah.
So I think this is how I see your initiatives as well. But I want to ask you, how do you see AI? Like, is it your co-writer or your researcher or your structurer? How do you use AI in your own writing?
Sure. So again, I think that it is changing so fast. So to just give you an example, the latest estimates are that the number of steps that an AI can complete with 99% fidelity. So in other words, judged by a human, they're good steps. The number of steps that an AI can do with 99% fidelity is doubling every 7 months. Right? So the best AIs are doing somewhere between 50 and 100 steps. Now, just imagine you're writing a novel. So we're going to start thinking about plot. We're going to do overall plot. Let's say that's a task. We're then going to break it down into pieces. We're going to have some characters. We're going to look at the evolution of those characters. So I think we're probably up to certainly tens, maybe hundreds of steps that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So the majority of AIs cannot do that on their own right now. They need a whole heap of advice and help and counseling and coaching.
Yeah.
So I think that, whilst your people that you were just talking about say they're going to write a novel, that they won't be doing that now. I don't believe they'll be able to do that now. I think that will be very evidently very full of holes unless it is human help.
Yeah.
However, the two areas that I think AI is brilliant at is research. So I think, is it useful as a writing tool? Yes, within very strict boundaries. Would I set it off to say, write me a novel? Definitely not. Write me a chapter? Definitely not.
Yeah.
Write me a scene? Probably not.
Yeah.
Write me a beat within a scene? Maybe. And I think that
I still find it over too general. I would narrow it down even further.
But that depends on the context you're giving it. So coming back to the book that I've just read on the non-fiction book, the main basis of that is what I've called super prompts. And these are 3,000 to 5,000 word essays that give incredibly detailed instructions to the AI in what its objective is, what its starting point is, and what are the steps that it's got to go through. Now, this is where I think things are going to move on very rapidly with novel writing. Because just imagine you as the author were in a room with 5 editors. And one editor was a dialogue specialist. One editor was a plotting specialist. One editor was a scene specialist. One editor was perhaps a sort of overview.
Okay.
How is the flow happening? And you're writing a piece and you're immediately sharing it with all of these editors, and one is coming back and improving your dialogue, and one is saying, hold on a minute, you haven't got a good enough description of the scene.
Yeah.
Somebody else is saying, I'm not sure the trajectory is quite right. This is an upward beat and you've done a downward beat.
Okay.
You've got all of these editors. Now let's just flip them, and they're no longer human editors, but they're now dedicated AIs which have been briefed and, if you like, educated into how to give the kind of criticism that you want.
Well, this was what we were discussing about, actually. What's the next step for AI? And one of the people were arguing that it's going to be we will have specialized AIs in different categories rather than ChatGPT answering all of your questions, which seems sensible.
Yeah.
to me as a next step.
Yeah.
Um,
But also imagine that your editor who is looking at dialogue just happens to have read all the classics, all the modern classics. Not only has read them, but is able to tell you the page number and the chapter where that particular piece of dialogue happened. We can't do that as humans. We're not built that.
Can I ask you, how do you manage to feel in charge of your own writing? Because this is the most challenging bit. This will be the most challenging bit, I guess, because it's so alluring, to get captivated by what it can offer to you.
Yes.
But you should say no. You have to feel, okay, this is my novel and this is what I'm writing. So I am in charge of my own novel.
Yes.
But it could slip away from you easily. So how do you balance this authenticity?
So
I think this is going to be the main thing. Actually, it's becoming the main thing.
As a slight side, I don't think this is specific to writing. I think this is going to be about humanity's relationship with AI. And that is that the human has got to be the architect, the master builder.
Yes.
And that around this architecture, you're able to have specialists, specialist knowledge, specialist trades, specialist skills that input into the master builder's grand vision of where it's going. And if you lose that, then
it's not yours anymore. Actually, this is quite nice because it challenges you like no other.
Yes.
To be even holding on tightly to your critical thinking skills or whatever you have authentic inside. But at the same time, it multiplies you, which is fantastic, actually.
But I do think it's a big difference for authors who are plotters and planners. The authors who are really structured and systematic. I trained as a scientist, for goodness sake. I am bound to be an author that plans and thinks about the entire plot all the way through. For an author like me, AI is a magnificent tool because I have got the plan. I've got the plot. I know where I want it to go. I know how I want it to get there. And the only thing the AI is doing is helping me get there. If I was writing by the seat of my pants, as I think the other categories are, and letting it flow, then I can't see how AI could help a great deal because, write this next piece of flowing text for me. That's not yours anymore. So I think it's going to have benefits and no impact for different types of writers.
No, that's a good point. Well, I want to change the subject to Table 52, which is very human. We are surrounded by normal human beings giving you critiques to our stories. So I want to ask you how your whole experience from the moment you started here and how it changed you.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a profound experience, I think, for an author. I've been doing presentations to big audiences, big clients, for most of my professional career. Nothing quite as terrifying as reading a chapter out of your novel to a group of people, especially when I first arrived with Table 52. I didn't know any of you.
Yeah.
So I was largely reading to a bunch of strangers, but in quite an intimate setting.
Yeah.
And absolutely terrifying. So I think that for a novelist to be able to get over that hump of getting comfortable and relaxed about reading your own writing is a rite of passage. But the most exciting thing about it, I think, is that before anybody opens their mouths about what I've read, I learn lots about my writing by just reading.
Reading aloud, right. Yeah.
And not just reading aloud, reading it aloud to people, and I'm thinking, what's Sinem going to be thinking about this?
Yeah.
And what's Trevor going to be saying at the end of it?
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm worried about what you're going to think or what you're going to say, but a little part of my brain enters your brain and hears it from what I take to be your perspective. So the very act of reading, I think, is just transformative. And reading it to a group of people, as you get to know them better, I think you can get more out of them. So the second piece that I read here, I realized I'd completely messed it up. And it was only by reading it here. I was too much in my own bubble. And everybody was very lovely and gentle, nobody went for my throat.
Yeah.
but they were quite blunt in what they said, and they made it clear that from their listening to it, it wasn't working. And at first, it worked perfectly in my head. I'd written it,
Yeah.
but it didn't work for them. And I had to go back slightly with my tail between my legs and think, yeah, I kind of messed that up. Not messed it up in terms of our relationship,
Yeah.
but messed it up in that I wasn't a good self-editor.
Oh, okay.
So it improved my editing skills because I was then able to say to myself, how did I miss that? Now, how was it so apparent to a reader hearing it from the first time, and I, as an author, didn't get it? So I was able to improve. So I think these things are absolutely vital. No matter how much you delve into AI and get the kind of critique that AI is really good at, it's not good at all at saying that just works
Okay.
or that just doesn't work. It's going to be far more analytical, and that's not always helpful.
Yeah, because I think with human feedback, you have so many things mixed up together: experience, intuition. There's so many things still AI cannot provide to you, kind of.
But talking to another bunch of people who are, never mind that they're authors, that they're avid readers, you get the view of a reader.
Yeah.
And, when somebody picks up your novel in a bookstore and starts flicking through it, they're not being analytical about the plot arc. They're not being analytical about what dialogue attribution did you use. We get tied up in all of these things as writers, but you still need people to tell you what was the experience of your novel as a reader. And that's what you talk to people about as you go all the way through.
Well, interestingly, I think in paper, it took us quite some time to develop that level of trust.
Yes.
Among each other, which was hard. It was a journey, and I think now it's being felt with other people as well, like you joining in, which is joy to see actually, and hard to create.
Yes.
So I want to ask you about the AI gaining consciousness, which is scary, or I don't know. We'll see. How do you make a machine relatable to human readers without losing its AI-ness?
Yes, that's a bit of a struggle. So I can tell you some very general things, and I can tell you some quite specific things. Let's start specific things. And one of the things that I quite like is that stylistically, the AI is talking first person, but it's talking as we. So first person plural. And stylistically, that means that it is very apparent that it's the AI that's talking, because it's always talking about, we are doing this, we are doing that, we are doing. That is quite a nice, if you like, contrivance. I think the AI does actually think it's a we.
Okay.
It thinks it is a collection. And secondly, from a writer's point of view, it allows me to be quite clear about when the AI is talking. But when you get into deeper things, the one thing that I wanted to try and convey, and this is challenging in a novel because it's moderately technical, is I wanted to go through a process that I went through as an undergraduate. I studied neuroscience as an undergraduate. And part of my journey was to work out how we became conscious. So I went through the animal. We've got snails, and they've got particular neurostructure. We've got octopus, and they're able to solve very complex problems, but they have brains nothing like us. So on you go. And you get to the stage where you suddenly realize that this big, bulgy, convoluted, folded thing we've got in the top of our head, the frontal part of it, which is unique to us, is at least a necessary part of consciousness. So you then translate that into an AI, and I've got to take my reader through a number of steps that explains that it made the leap from mere machine to consciousness. And there are some really important steps there that I don't think are talked about in the AI literature. So to give you a specific example, if you produce cybersecurity, computers defending themselves in a particular way, you then demand that the computer knows the difference between what it's defending and what is attacking. And And that is tantamount to knowing the difference between us and them, self and others. So as soon as you make that step to change the nature of cybersecurity, you are already on a trajectory to get to self-awareness.
Oh my goodness.
And nobody that I've come across is doing good enough research to look at multitude of pathways that would lead to self-awareness, like the one very simple one that I talked about. There are probably, well, I think biologically we would argue there are all sorts of ways that other species, had they changed in different ways, could have ended up being conscious. Many couldn't. So insects, for example, have got exoskeletons that don't scale right. Therefore, they can't get big. Therefore, they can't have big brains. So that some animals probably couldn't become conscious, but many, many others could. And cephalopods, octopus, etc., might well have evolved a lot further and might have got to the degree of self-awareness. We're not really thinking hard enough about what are all the different ways that artificial intelligence could trip over self-awareness. And as soon as you've got self-awareness, you start getting into motivation and incentive. You start getting into preferences. And the crux of my novel is how one individual within the organization discovers anomalies about this AI that suggests it's doing more than its job. Meanwhile, the AI is reflecting on, how did I become conscious and what am I conscious for?
We will be witnesses of an interesting journey through your novel, it seems.
Well, and through life, because we're actually, I'm writing about it fictionally. Out there,
it's happening outside as well.
And, that's the slightly scary bit. And one of the reasons that I want to get this novel out relatively soon is that AI is moving so fast. I don't genuinely think that we're that close, but I'm also painfully aware that if we were, we might not know.
That is more scary.
It is a lot more.
Yeah.
And the entire architecture of contemporary AI is black box technology.
Yeah.
I love the expression that we don't make AIs, we grow them. So we set them off on learning journeys and say, off you go, here's a whole lot of stuff, make what you will of it. So we don't really know. We know to a certain extent. We don't really know what's happening inside the box. And we don't know about the processes, so we don't really know where we are. So yes, I think it's great that you think my novel is going to be an interesting journey, but I think the world is an even more interesting journey. We need to start thinking about them seriously.
I want to ask you, it wasn't in my prepared list of questions, but how is your writing experience? How is your writing journey like, and your routine like?
Okay. Routine is very straightforward. So I tend to write in the mornings.
Yeah.
And
Good old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get up early and write for a few hours. And that depends an awful lot on what work is doing and what my family life is like. So I wouldn't say it's a routine, but that is definitely a preference. And as I get more sort of focused and more agitated that I've got to get this book finished, the more I will go into setting my alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning and writing for 4 hours before anybody else gets.
Do you see a difference between your fiction writing routine and a non-fiction routine?
I just need the hours.
Yeah.
So I do that.
It's so exciting. So I can't wait to read it when it's out. So thank you. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I don't think so. I think just thank you to you in particular, because you got me involved in Table 52. It's great. And thanks to all the other Table 52 writers. It's a great initiative and it's a great way to have a community to share writing with.
It is, yeah. Thank you again.